Good
Hello,
afternoon,
Andrew.
sir.
Hi, where are you?
I'm in Toronto.
Wow, a lot of Toronto. Okay, good.
I gotta start with the fact that Dragonslayer was your second film as a director, and you got to work with Derek Van Lint, Alex North, Phil Tippett, and Howard Koch. What stands out for you from working with this amazing team?
Oh, I'm
What
very,
stood the
I,
test of time, I should say?
very compelling and persuasive personality. It was a different world. Also, uh, I was just talking about this with one of the other interviewers, which is that it turns out that back in those days, everybody was playing Dungeons and Dragons. And these two studios, Disney and Paramount, were desperately looking for a movie about, a dragon, and they had tried unsuccessfully to develop. I learned they had tried unsuccessfully to develop something, and so Hal Barwood and I came along with this thing that we had written, and in part had written to take advantage of what we saw George doing at ILM. We all of us are Northern Californians. ILM was based then here. I was very much around when George was creating ILM, and he had starfields and spaceships. What if you used all that horsepower on something different? And so Hal and I cooked up this other story, and Hal was very much in the grip of Tolkien. Hal was a huge, fan, and I was a huge fan of Fantasia, Mickey Mouse, right, and his sorcerer. So we threw all this stuff into a bag, shook it up, and cooked up Dragonslayer. And I guess there was enough something in the zeitgeist about such a project that we could catch the interest of those very fancy and distinguished people that you mentioned. Yeah, yeah.
This was ILM's first film outside of working with Lucasfilm. Was there some part of convincing them, like, hey, you got to come do this? Or did you pitch it and they just ran with it? What was that like?
We didn't even pitch it. We were around. We knew them all. I mean, it was like the distinction you're making is absolutely right. You're true. It's true. But at the time, it was a complete non-issue. I mean, maybe in terms of ILM's billing department, how they had to send the paperwork to Disney and Paramount to pay the bills, and it was different than. But in terms of interfacing with, because we had been around when George was doing his movies and had come to know Dennis Muren, Ken Ralston, and Phil Tippett, and Bruce Nicholson. There's a whole, cadre of superstars, young then and trailblazing guys, and they were excited about. They were eager to get going, especially Tippett. Tippett was just champing at the bit to get into this territory for reasons that I'm sure you understand.
Well, before I talk about the dragon, one of the things that I really love is that the film has such a great sense of the magic that is being created, and that today, of course, to be done with mostly visual effects, probably, or like actual like digital effects. But at the time, you have a lot of sequences in the film that work with obviously practical effects time and again. How did you imagine some of those magical effects actually working in the film?
Hoping with fingers crossed, really. It was, as you say, only my second movie. I'd been exposed to the process of special effects, but no, I think I was asking in some instances more than ILM could deliver, frankly. And we struggled, and some of the results are still there. But that's that handcrafted look that maybe we can be proud of now. But look, I understand the enthusiasm for the delight of you shoot it and you got it, and the theatrical pleasure of doing something in front of an audience, in front of a camera lens that has that magical effect. However, there were so many instances, where I lost a lot of hair on that movie because it was so hard to pull off a lot of it at the time. It was I didn't realize going in there would be days when I was just kind of paralyzed. When I'm very sorry, Mr. Robbins, but I'm afraid this cable is not really strong enough. When it was sent from Burbank, it's not. We can't. Oh no, it won't curl. No, well, didn't you see the storyboards? But well, yes, but we're very sorry. And so you've got to invent how you're going to do it right then on the spot with 120 crew members looking on. And I remember saying to myself at the time, just how is it possible a movie of this size with this many people, and they're all looking at me as if it's an 8mm movie and I'm Steven Spielberg and the Fabelmans. That's really the way it was. I have very vivid memories of some of those then very terrible days. So yeah, there's a lot of pleasures after the fact in handcrafting it, but you can lose a lot of years off your life and and angst about but when we got back to Northern California and we did the post-production here and ILM was in full operation, it was a great pleasure to see them excited about Go Motion, which was put to fantastic use in Dragonslayer, very, very major component of the look and feel of that movie.
Well, I think that may be one of the reasons, amongst obviously the actual design of the dragon, but I love the story that Guillermo del Toro and George R.R. Martin say that Vermithrax is their favorite dragon. Did you get a feeling early on how much people are going to love this dragon?
No. I love that dragon, and I was very involved in and Hal Barwood was Hal's very talented designer, but the dragon was designed by an artist we knew named David Bennett, the late David Bennett, who in profile resembled his dragon. We used to tease him about that. And we were very, very happy with it. And but we never, ever dreamt that it would be a template for other filmmakers. No. Somebody asked me just a few minutes ago about Guillermo. And when I met him, it was at a workshop in Guadalajara. The Sundance Institute sent a few of us Americans down there to interface with Mexican filmmakers, and he was a young filmmaker who was assigned to me randomly. Or maybe he asked, I should ask him, maybe it wasn't so random. Anyway, the basis of our getting acquainted those first few days was Dragonslayer. Mathew, oh my God, he just loved it. And so when it came time to do a bonus for this new DVD, we'd like you in conversation with another film. Okay, I know exactly who it ought to be. And if you've listened to it, you'll see that he's Guillermo the boy at the big screen. It's just such a pleasure to watch the movie with him.
He's one of my favorite people to talk to. I've only chatted with him a couple of times, but there's no one like him in terms of his love of cinema and just details, the details. And this film, Dragonslayer has so many fantastic details. It blows me away seeing it now because I remember watching it when I was very young and how much it blew me away and thinking, this is why aren't there more movies like this?
Well, it was a very hard movie to make. And at that summer, it was all about Raiders of the Lost Ark. And this movie came and went very quickly, which is an enormous shock because we'd spent over a year on it. And we never expected that it would vanish it was a big disappointment in terms of box office.
But it certainly had a life afterwards. I saw it on VHS. So I know all my friends saw it on VHS. And so it is amazing how in that era film certainly had a second life. And, obviously it's shown its life today too. In
And then I'm
the
just curious, have you looked at the new one? Yeah. So
yeah.
I'm curious to know from you, do you see the difference? Is it significant to you?
Oh yeah. It's amazing. I mean, it had been a number of years since I had watched it. Obviously, I don't think I've ever seen it in a theater, so that's my loss there. But I mean, seeing it now and how vibrant and the colors, and I notice this is one of the details of the magic I was talking about at the end when the dragon's dying in the water and all the lights are coming up out of the water as if it's, it's life force coming up out of it. It's so vibrant now and it looks so sharp.
Well, that's this video team at Paramount. They had campaigned to do it. They were waiting to do it. When can we do Dragonslayer? When can we? Because they had done a lot of other films, a lot of the Robert Altman movies they had done. I didn't even know about the existence of this group, and I had not contacted them. In case you're wondering, Guillermo and I had not campaigned for this. This came from them. And they asked me if I would be interested. I live in Northern California, so I went down several times to LA and sat in. And I really didn't have to, I mean, they were way ahead of me. So they knew the film very well, and they could see all the really shoddy, the grainy skies and matte lines and no shadow detail, all this stuff that really and they showed me when I first arrived. Here's some Mr. Robbins. Here's some sample scenes, and I could tell within the first 5 minutes that I was going to be over the moon, because this is the closest thing you're going to see to having it up on the big screen is what they've done. Also, the sound, the music,
Yes.
and that's a Skywalker Sound team that built those soundtracks. And it was Walter Murch who did the mix, the famous Walter Murch. So it was many talented hands involved in all this.
Paramount has done some amazing restorations and work in this regard. So it's amazing to see. It's not all just the old dramas from like the 60s and 70s being redone. It's nice to see. There were films in the 80s that are shockingly well done that need to be restored. So it's great to see this film there.
Well, I'm very interested to hear what you had to say about how you remembered it, from the VHS. And then it really does look different, because that's really what I was hoping for. And I'm not going to be able to run it for my grandchildren. They're too little. It's too violent. But
maybe in a couple of years, yeah.
Yeah, in a couple of years. But it's a very surprising and gratifying thing to know that this is out there. And then the film will be remembered in this fashion rather than that other thing that I just wish you could hunt them down, pay a bounty, and then put them and incinerate them.
Well, the last couple of things I'm going to ask really fast is, how did you get involved with Guillermo to write the story for Pinocchio? Because I understand you wrote that story.
Yes. It was 11 years ago. He and I had written many screenplays together. 11 or 12.
Wow.
Yeah. And and because we're talking about Dragonslayer, I should tell you that when I met him, most of our conversation for the first few days in Guadalajara was about Dragonslayer. Right? He just was all Dragonslayer all the time. But he was starting his career in Hollywood, and we stayed in touch, and we just have a lot of fun together, cooking up stories. And he would come to San Francisco. I lived in the city of San Francisco. I'm out in the country now, but he would come, or I went down to Guadalajara a lot. I had frequent flyer on Mexicana Airlines and spent a lot of time with him and his family. And we worked on all kinds of stuff together. And so I knew that he had some very interesting and stimulating ideas about Pinocchio. And we started working when he was in New Zealand, when he was going to do The Hobbit.
Right.
I made a couple of trips down to Wellington, actually, in those days, and spent time with him while he was theoretically prepping The Hobbit. And we laid out the principal elements of what you saw. And I wrote. I wrote the first draft on my own, which was unusual, but he was busy. So I took it. It was by that time we had done so many things. It was like the apportionment of it was sort of again a non-issue, but I've been asked about that. And in that instance, I wrote the first draft, based on adaptation by the two of us, and it has a lot of those elements. I mean, it's set in that sort of proto-fascist war atmosphere, and a lot of the religious symbolism was already there. It was very, very much, many of the principal elements were already there, but nobody would make it. We went everywhere. And it came up again and again. Why don't we really, this interesting, it's ambitious, it's so different. We don't want to take the risk of the budget of this much money. Would you not consider doing it in cell animation or, no. And so it went on a very, very distant back burner. And years later, he revived it with a musical component. And there are many elements that were not in my first draft, which are just wonderful elements, and some of the most provocative. The whole issue of mortality is much more emphatic in the current version. But I'm just so thrilled that he managed to get this made, and the fact that it won the best animated film was a big bonus. But this was not easy. This it's still slightly baffling to me because I got so inured to the disappointment of each submission that was being made back then. Because 11 years ago, I was very terribly excited about it because the whole idea of corruption. Adult corruption. We're not talking about Dragonslayer now, but it was very, very new and fresh, and no one had been exposed to anything like that, given the subject matter.
Well, the story is fantastic, and I really appreciate all the details of Dragonslayer. Thank you so much for the time. Okay, thank you for the kind words. I'm very, very happy to hear from you, actually. I'm glad I asked. Thank you. Have a great day. You too. Bye-bye.